Come on in, folks. Welcome, welcome. We'll give you a second to get your audio set up and your video set up. Good to have you. I see lots of names that I recognize. Some new names that I don't recognize. That is wonderful as well. Come on in. All righty, here they come. We'll give everybody just a minute longer. While they're getting connected up, I'll go ahead and introduce myself at the top here. I'm Eddie Gordon, Community Manager here at Pragmatic Institute. And today we have a wonderful conversation in store for you with Jean-Sebastien Tasse. JS has a deep leadership skill and a vast set of experience across the product industry. He's going to talk to us today about how leaders can build an exceptional team and how job seekers can find a lasting place on a growth-minded product team. Let's do some housekeeping here at the top. You will notice if this is your first time in a Zoom webinar, which probably it's not, you will notice you've got some additional buttons down there at the bottom. You have both a chat button and you also have a Q&A button. Important difference. If you have questions for Jean-Sebastien today that you would like me to toss over to him, please put those in the Q&A box. If you have witty commentary or comments to each other or bald jokes directed at me, you can stick those in the chat and they will flee up the screen as usual. But here, I'm going to give you a little quiz. Let us all put in the chat the answer to this question. If you are a hiring manager, what is one thing that makes candidates stand out for you? Go ahead and stick that in the chat. What is one thing that makes candidates stand out for you? If you are a job seeker, what is something that you do to distinguish yourself in the application process? Jean-Sebastien, I know we haven't formally introduced you yet, but go ahead and unmute if you've got any comments on these. This is always fun to see what we got coming in here. Experience, top answer. Steven says experience. I suppose that could apply either to the manager that is hiring or to the job seeker. You're looking for both of those, right?
Yeah, everything I see in the chat makes a lot of sense. Experience, cultural alignment, etc. So we've got great answers coming in.
Yeah, tenure in prior roles, I see there. Experience is a big one in here. Domain knowledge, Christopher. Yeah. Well, Jean-Sebastien, experience is certainly going to come up and be relevant to today. I'm wondering what folks do if they don't yet have all that experience. Maybe that's something we can talk about today a little bit. Skills and attitude. Yeah, love that one, Kapal. Skills and attitude. Well, you all have passed the test. You have distinguished between the chat and the Q&A. So congratulations. Good job. All righty, Jean-Sebastien, if you would click on over to that next slide. Here we are, the Pragmatic Alumni Community. Hopefully, all of you are now familiar with the Pragmatic Alumni Community. Most of you probably came from there, heard about today's webinar from there. If you have not yet visited the Pragmatic Alumni Community, you are certainly missing out. That is the place to go for product-related resources. For anyone who has graduated from a Pragmatic Institute course, this is your continuing community, your place to find resources, to network in the product industry. And as you will see today, it is a place where we find incredible people in the industry that can offer expertise to all of us, such as Jean-Sebastien Tasse, who we will learn from today. Jean-Sebastien is a seasoned product leader. Oh, Jean-Sebastien, you can switch over to the next slide for me. That's good. JS, as his friends call him, is a seasoned product leader with over 15 years of experience spanning product management, marketing, and sales. He's got a strong blend of business acumen and technical expertise. He excels at bridging the gap between strategy, development, and customer value. Not to mention, he is a recognized leader in the pragmatic alumni community, as we just discussed, and is the recipient of the Distinguished Community Choice Award there. It is so good to have you with us, Jean-Sebastien. You are going to talk to us today about, and I love this approach, hiring, but from two perspectives: the perspective of the hirer and the hiree. I will hand the reins over to you, and we'll take questions a little bit as they come, but mostly we'll save them to the end. So, folks, if you've got questions, stick them in the Q&A, and I'll toss them over to Jean-Sebastien after his main presentation. All right, Jean-Sebastien, take it away, please.
You so much for the warm intro, Eddie. So here's another slide of the bio. I'll go quickly over it. So I'm currently managing a team of 11 product managers in the industry, in the energy industry. I've worked across lots of different products, B2B, B2C, lots of physical products, software, SaaS, etc. So lots of industries. At the personal level, I thought of adding a bit of fun stuff there. So I love old 70s progressive rock music, as well as cycling and volleyball. And I did manage to write an article on product management lessons from Pink Floyd, you know, that famous 70s band. And it's on the Pragmatic Institute website. And well, I think it's a fun read. So anyway, take a look if you're either interested in, well, product management, and you certainly are. Maybe you're interested in Pink Floyd as well. So it's an article you can take a look at. Okay, so if we jump in the content in terms of agenda, there's really two parts to my presentation. The first one is about hiring and getting hired. And the second one is about growing PM teams and tips for job seekers to choose the right company where you have opportunities to grow. So for part one, hiring and getting hired. Well, I'm going to start with a statement that might be a little bit bold, but I think it makes a lot of sense. So for product leaders, hiring is the most important decision you can make as product leader, because you are only as good as your team. So, well, unless you're planning on working 70, 80 hours a week and do your team's job, which is definitely not something I recommend. You know, the output and the success of you personally, but of your team is really dependent on the skills of the people that make up that team. So just think of the impact that a really strong candidate, or, you know, a new recruit on your team can have over sometimes years, versus somebody who's a little bit weaker. And then you start to grasp how important hiring decisions are. So sometimes people do it as an afterthought, don't spend a whole lot of time there. But, you know, my recommendation to hiring managers is to spend a lot of time making these decisions carefully. So it all starts with writing the job description. So I'll tackle each of these elements from both perspectives, starting from the product leader's perspective, but then looking at it from the job candidate standpoint. So first tip for product leaders is to imagine what success will look like 6 to 9 months after the hiring, and backtracking to identify the required skills. So I'll give you an example. So at some point I wanted to hire somebody, and in this case, the main deliverable I was expecting from that person, like 6 months down the road, was to define a new generation of a physical product. And the key thing with that is that the hardware piece of that product was going to be deployed at customer site, and it wasn't going to be possible to upgrade it for 5 to 6 years. So obviously that requires, you know, the software part. Yes, there was some flexibility to change it, but the hardware part was to be static. So that required for me a lot of skills. Well, first spotting emerging market trends, being able for the candidate to project himself, you know, many years ahead, and see what the market and the customer requirements were going to look like. So I also needed technology expertise because it was a rather technical product. So my job description looked a bit like, I wanted a technical degree, engineering, physics, something like this to understand a bit the industry, as well as a senior product manager with a lot of experience to be able to spot these emerging trends and to see what the market was going to look like 5 to 6 years ahead. So those were that's the way I approach it in this case. And after the person was hired, within a couple of months, the person was already able to see a bit and spot the key use cases and elements for that new generation of products. So I can say that this hire was a success. For job hunters, well, we love talking about problems and solution at Pragmatic, and when you think about it, like a job posting is a solution to a company problem. So try to uncover what that problem is and tweak your resume accordingly. So I'm just giving an example here, and we could go on with tons of examples. But if the job description includes things like skills like market segmentation and dealing with ambiguity, well, it could be that the company is aiming to penetrate a new market segment, or that they want that new candidate to work on a totally new product. So sometimes the company problem is stated clearly in the job description. Sometimes it's not. So an exercise that can be fun to see it to do is take a look at the job description and then take a look at the Pragmatic framework, which is a wonderful tool in case you haven't checked it out, and see which of the Pragmatic activities are most represented in the job description. And then if you say, okay, the company in the job description is emphasizing a lot market research, market problems, etc., or maybe the company is emphasizing a little bit more the go-to-market activities. Well, just knowing that allows you to tweak your resume and to highlight more the skills that the company might be looking for. So that's first advice for job hunters. I'm going to move on. So once we have a job description, well, there's the whole recruitment process. So a couple of tips here for product leaders, and then I'll approach it from the candidate perspective. For product leaders, well, look for measurable business results in the resume, because there's lots of resumes that I receive when I hire, and that lots of other product leaders receive, where people basically put their job description, what they're in charge of. I was responsible for XYZ, this and that, which is relevant. But in the end, product management to me is really about delivering business results. So I want to know in somebody's resume if they were able to increase revenues or to improve retention or improve customer satisfaction. So I'm really looking for these metrics, for these quantifiable data, and understanding that in the end everything we do should be towards obtaining some type of outcome. Second advice related to my opening statement about how important it is to make hiring decision. Well, cast a wide net. So I talked to lots and lots of candidates. Recently, I was hiring for a few roles, and maybe I overdid it, but I spoke to 20 plus people in some short discussions. They were not all formal interviews, but I've spoken with lots and lots of people. I networked in in-person events as well. So if I include all the people I spoke to, maybe it's 30-40 people about the position I was hiring for, because you want to have a funnel. So the more people you bring into your hiring funnel, well, the better the candidates you can have at the end. It takes more time, but the success you can have and having really strong candidates is good if you use that approach. And the third one is something I noticed in this recent hiring experience, is to be open to atypical profiles. In this case, I was looking for people with 6 to 9 years of product management experience, and there are some people who made it to almost to the very, very end, who did not have these 6 years of experience in product management, but they more than compensated for it with other experiences, like in marketing, like in entrepreneurship, etc. So there's lots of different jobs that prepare people very well to be good product managers. People who have worked as consultants as well can also be good, depending on the type of consultant, but management consultants as well. So there's lots of profession that can bring people to product management. And so be open to those atypical profiles, especially for smaller companies. I've hired also in smaller companies, and sometimes there are less candidates that apply when you're a hiring manager in a smaller company, but you can still have pretty good candidates if you're open to atypical profiles. And the fourth one is to favor product management experience over industry experience. I'm probably preaching to the choir given the audience today, but I think based on my experience, the results that somebody is able to deliver as a PM is a lot more related to their PM experience than to the fact that they might know or not your industry. And I have an example to share. There's a role I've hired in the past for, so I wanted somebody, really senior. I hired somebody who had no knowledge of the industry I was in. And within 2-3 months, that person was able to deliver a really good business case. So it's somebody who had more than 10 years of experience in product management. And I have the counter example where sometimes I changed team and I inherited somebody who was hired mostly for industry expertise with less PM experience, and that person was really struggling even a year in the job to reach the objectives. So to me, it's relatively easy to learn and experience if somebody has the right mindset, if that person is curious to learn. But learning how to be a good PM, it takes years. So I prefer to, obviously, if you have the perfect blend of industry experience plus PM experience, that's great. But, I tend to favor PM experience. And if we compare product management with other profession, it's a bit strange because some companies might really hire for industry experience. While if, I don't know, a company is hiring for a head of sales or a head of accounting or something like this, they're going to look for an experienced salesperson or an experienced accountant. And in product management, for some reason, sometimes people who are hired as product leaders have no PM experience, which to me is a bit of a nonsense. But it could be because it's a younger profession, not as well known as other professions. Now, if I look at all of these advice from the perspective of job hunters, well, obviously the first one, include measurable achievements in your resume. So, quantifying anything that you've been able to deliver, sales increase. It could be also the number of daily average users or feature adoptions, or any of these quantifiable metrics shows that you're concerned about delivering outcomes and not outputs. One way for job seekers to stand out is to reach out to the hiring managers. Oftentimes, if you read carefully the job description, is going to say reporting to XYZ, reporting to the director of product for whatever. So on LinkedIn nowadays, it's relatively easy to find this person, and just sending a short email. Hey, I'd like to connect. I've applied to the position. I have maybe 1 or 2 questions, or I'd like to tell you a bit more about my application, can set you apart from other candidates. The hiring manager might not accept, but when they're looking at, let's say 20, 30, or 50 resume, and at least that you're going to stand out a little bit because they've seen your name somewhere on LinkedIn or via email or whatever. So just that can make a difference to bring your resume maybe higher on the pile. One thing that to me is super important, and we discussed it a bit earlier, is to use PM language when describing non-PM experiences. So I've mentioned that there are many things that people do in other professions that are transferable to PM jobs, but unfortunately, some people don't highlight it very well in their resume. So if you've been, for instance, a developer and you want to break into product management, yes, saying that you can code in Python or that you've refactored whatever can be interesting. But as a product leader, what I want to know about your per experience is, have you participated in customer interviews? Have you helped identify use cases or use scenarios or requirements? Have you helped clarify, let's say, a persona, etc.? So anything that is a bit more business than purely technical, because all of that, if you've interviewed customers, that prepares you well to do a good PM job. If you supported customers, if you've done product demos or stuff like this, these are all things that can prepare you for a PM career. So make sure to highlight those. Likewise, if you're a marketing expert, saying that you've prepared, I don't know, you've negotiated a contract with a company, or you've done, I don't know, AdWords or whatever, is interesting, but what you're most likely to do as a product manager is more about the positioning statement. So who was the persona? What's the value proposition? What are the differentiators? So it's best to highlight those elements in resume rather than the more tactical marketing aspect of your job, which you probably have done, and it's great, but try to highlight a little bit more the like strategic business thing, segmentation, etc., which you're most likely to do in as a PM. And finally, if you have low PM experience, it's good to target companies in an industry you already know. So if you've worked as a developer in fintech, well, maybe applying for fintech PM job, you're most likely to get noticed rather than applying for a company in another industry. Good. This would be a point maybe where, if there are any questions we want to tackle, Eddie, that might be a good point before I move to the second part.
Sure, we can do a couple here. There have been some great conversations going on in the chat about this idea of hiring non-traditional experienced people for product roles. Some comments about hiring for talent instead of experience, which I found really interesting. And you touched on this a little bit too. I'm curious, how does hiring atypical profiles affect employee or team satisfaction? Are there any particular challenges that might arise if you've hired someone that doesn't have specific experience in this role, but is definitely talented? Any thoughts on that? How does it affect job satisfaction, retention, integration with a more experienced team, perhaps?
Yeah, that's a big topic you're touching on. So I think, well,
that's my job. I ask the big questions. Yes.
Yeah, sure. These people that might have less PM experience, might need a little bit of training. But if you hire the right person, they're going to connect the dots very quickly. So one approach I like to use is to pair, and that applies to atypical profiles, but even any new hire, like for onboarding, is to pair newcomers to the team with a more senior person on the team, somebody who's been on the team for a while. So like these non-traditional profiles can bring a lot of a lot of added value to a team, because I think like PM teams, especially larger ones, should have some complementarity of skills. So you don't want to have all cookie cutters people who are exactly the same. It's good to have people to have, for instance, I'm going to name a few, but more quantitative profiles. Have profiles that are a little bit more towards go-to-market, commercialization. People that are more technical, if your products are technical. So having these blends of skills so that people can be complementary. Some people might be super good at, thinking about, let's say, positioning, while others are really good at interviewing customers. So they can, if there's this blend of skills in your team, all the other people can learn from each other. So, bringing in atypical profiles, I think is a good way to actually make the team more satisfied, because the team is then more well-rounded and they can deliver better results.
And so should that hiring practice, hiring atypical profiles for your product group, should that be standard, or should that be a rare exception when hiring?
Oh, that's that's a tough one. I think it's highly contextual.
Okay, yeah.
For sure, if if somebody's running a PM team, it's ideal to have, I'd say at least half of the people who are experienced as PM, because in the end, this is what they do. But then depending on the industry, etc., having a few atypical people on the team is not going to change the team a whole lot. And actually, they might have learned different approaches to solving different problems. I'm thinking, sometimes management consultants, for instance, might use tools that are slightly different from product managers to do more or less the same type of work. So sometimes it can even help the team to expand their toolbox, for instance.
Amazing. Yeah. Well, I'll let you get on to your part two. We've got some questions coming into the Q&A box. I'll just remind everybody listening to stick your questions in there in the Q&A box. Most of them I'll hold, and then I'll toss them over to Jean-Sebastien when he's finished the main part of his presentation. But we'll let you continue. We are listening. Wrapped.
Sure. Thank you. So part two, growing PM teams and tips for choosing a company where you can grow. Well, this is a book especially for product leaders. If you don't know him, he's pretty famous. Marty Kagan and the Silicon Valley product group. They've written great books. So one of the things he says that in his book is the first job as a product leader is to develop and grow the product team. And the KPI as a product leader is how successful your team member careers will be. And that really resonated with me. It reminded me of another book by Simon Sinek that it says, starting with why and understanding what is your why as a product leader. And I would probably say that this is my why as a product leader, growing the team and making them more successful. This is where I derive a lot of satisfaction. So putting that in perspective, well, if the job of a product leader is to grow and develop his team, well, for new and aspiring PMs, the number one goal, or at least one of the key objectives when looking for a new company to join, is to find a company that will help you grow. If you're a seasoned PM, you probably already have the skills. So joining a company where there's growth opportunity might be less critical. But PMs, there's obviously great courses you can take such as Pragmatic Institute courses that will teach you let's say the foundation skills and the mindset, etc. But a lot of things that we learn as PM is actually on the job. It's contrary to other professions where somebody studies, I don't know, in accounting, then they go on to work and the accounting job is probably relatively similar to what they learn at university. PMs, you might have had one class in product management if you're lucky at university, but most likely you've never had a product management class. So you'll learn it on the job. So joining a company that favors this growth environment is key. And a couple of questions to ask in interview process is, what's your role as a product leader? How do you work with your team members? Is there any training, coaching available in the company? And especially with the two first questions, like what's your role as a product leader? I would look for words in the hiring manager answers like, coaching, mentoring, growing the team, developing the team, because to me, that's a key part of the job. If when you ask that question, you don't see these words in the question, it might not be a company where growing people is a key objective. So if you have other choices, maybe there's a better company for you. Obviously now it's a tough job environment. So if people are unemployed, obviously they're probably going to jump on the first job offer they have, and that's totally understandable. But in the perfect context, if you already have a job, for instance, and you're looking for your next opportunity, asking these questions can help you see whether the company is a good fit for you to grow. Also in product, in leadership, we talk about a lot about empowerment. And to me, it's only a matter of sandboxes, not literally, but in a way, it's one thing I like to do is to make the sandbox of my PMs just a little bit bigger than their comfort zone. So if they're, let's say, more junior PM, the sandboxes is going to be a little bit smaller. If they're senior, they're going to be given more autonomy. But this is a way to stretch people and let them grow. And in this case, it's not it doesn't rely on the product leader shoulder to do everything. It's just to give them enough space to try doing new things or experimenting a little bit, especially if there's a tolerance for failure in your company. Not all companies have it, but if you have it, it's a great way to make your people grow and experiment new things. I'm going to give an example, the revelation of an experienced team member. In the previous job I had, I became a product leader, and one of the person in that company had been there for many years, like more than 5 years. And that person, 5 to 10 years in the company, and that person, that PM, never had the chance to pitch a new product concept to upper management. And I thought after a couple of months, I think you're really good. I think you could make a great presentation to the executives. And I gave that person the chance to present that. That person was really stressed out, but in the end delivered a great presentation that was accepted and approved by management. So, there's lots of different growth opportunities, and as a manager, spotting where people can grow, and if sometimes they were just never given the opportunity to do something amazing, and when given the chance, well, they can deliver. So it starts at the beginning with trust and giving them opportunities. Also, you might have heard about the strange animals of product management. There's Google it if you haven't, but it's really funny. These animals that we can come across in product management. The one that has become probably the most famous is the hippo, the highest paid person, the highest paid person's opinion. I didn't like it when my managers before were behaving as hippos, imposing their opinion when it wasn't backed with data. So now that I'm a product leader, I try not to do it with my team. So one way to avoid it as a product leader is to ask questions to your team, give them strategic context, so objectives, constraints, guardrails. So give them, what's the sandbox more or less in which they're playing. Ensure that there are no blind spots, so that they have covered different angles, the financial aspect, the legal aspect, the technological aspect, the go-to-market aspect, etc. Offer a level of support based on the PM experience. So that's related to my idea of sandboxes. So more junior people get more support, obviously. More seasoned ones get less support. And then get out of the way. Give them the context, the objectives, the blind spot, and then let them work and let them explore and come up with a solution. And I'm even going to go a step further on this one, and maybe not all product leaders will agree with me, but sometimes I try to put my opinion aside in a given context. If the recommendation that my PM teams bring makes sense and is logical and doesn't have any blind spots, at the end, if it comes down to a debate of opinion, they've thought about the subject, they've spoken with lots of internal stakeholders to come up with the best recommendation for that product. So, okay, let's go with what they recommend, unless I see a major logical failure or blind spot. And 2 last tips before I shut up. We're coming towards the end. The first one is to give your teams problems to solve, not solution. That's something that Marty Kagan as well talks a lot in his book, and that's true. People who end up in product management, in my opinion, are highly autonomous, self-motivated people in general. And and lots of them are good problem solvers. So they want to be given problems to solve, not be handed out the solution and deliver this. Giving them problems to solve will definitely increase a lot their motivation. If they have the right profile for the job, they will love it. Also, they will love the product leader as well. Caring about their well-being, that's basic. Because what I've noticed is a happy employee is usually a high-performing employee. And if I can share a retention success story in my 6-7 years as a product leader, pretty much everyone on my team either stayed with the team or got a promotion or went to retirement. So I think that's a great outcome for a product leader. If I circle back to what I was telling you about that the key goal of a product leader is to grow his team. And people who get job promotions, that's perfect. They're growing. If they stay in the team, they're happy. And if they go to retirement, well, there may be they might have reached that venerable age where people retire. So applying these principles to me has worked very well, because unhappy employees, they're going to start looking for a different job, and within, I don't know, 6 months maybe they're going to leave the company. So if they're staying, I'm assuming they're happy to some extent. So the conclusion. Well, for product leaders, spend enough time making hiring decisions because they have significant, long-lasting impact. Growing your team should be at the top of our priority list, of your to-do list. I would argue that it should be pretty close to number one, but again, it depends on the context. For new and aspiring PM, joining companies or product leaders that value growing PM skills is definitely something you should try to do. In your resume, make sure to include measurable achievements, so business outcomes there in your resume. And if you don't have a whole lot of PM experience, well, make sure to use PM language when describing non-PM experiences. Again, the pragmatic framework can be super helpful here to know what PM language is, looking at all those pragmatic boxes. So that's about it. That's what I had in store for you guys. So I hope you've enjoyed, and then we can move on to the Q&A.
Amazing, Jean-Sebastien. Thank you so much. We've got questions coming into the Q&A board over there, which I'm going to toss over to you. And then, oh, look, you even get some applause icons coming up there. Hey, look at that.
Cool. Thank you very much.
If I did not mention it at the top, and I think I did not, yes, you will receive a recording of today's presentation, including Jean-Sebastien's slides, so that you can see all those. So hopefully you just relaxed and soaked in the presentation today. You will get a recording of that. Jean-Sebastien, we've got plenty of time for some questions. Let's let the people talk. Oh, you know what else I'll say as well, since our theme today is hiring and being hired. Folks, if you are trying to fill a position, or if you are trying to get hired for a position, go ahead and use the chat to post any job postings that you have, or even links to your LinkedIn or your resume. Feel free to use today's chat as a networking opportunity as well. One thing you can be sure of is that the folks here are fans of Pragmatic, so you are in a room full of people with common product, language, and methodology, which is a great resource for hiring and being hired. So have fun with that. I will just offer one more plug for the Pragmatic Alumni community, of course, where there is a job board that you will find in the career development group. So if you've not made use of that, you're missing out as well. Huge discussions there about folks looking for jobs, posting for jobs. That is your networking opportunity du jour. So with that, did you like, was that French, Jean-Sebastien? How was that? How was my French?
Yeah, good. You're doing great.
Not bad, huh?
Yeah. Are you looking for a private French teacher or something? Or
are you saying I should look for one? Because probably that's what you should be saying. As I should look for one.
Just teasing.
All righty. Questions for you, my friend. Here is the first one that popped up here in the Q&A from the mysterious Anonymous. I've worked in B2B and B2B2C as a product manager. I want to transition to B2C. Yep. How should I address my lack of experience in B2C over in my cover letter and in my interviews? Is that a big fault? Not much B2C experience, Jean-Sebastien, and how might they present themselves in interviews and resumes?
Yeah, in my experience, like it's not it shouldn't be a big issue. Like some companies might value a lot previous B2C experience, and I don't think they should, because somebody who's good, like the core principles apply, and that's why the pragmatic classes apply, and the pragmatic framework applies to B2C and B2B as well. All of the principles are the same. Like I'm going to take, for instance, researching market problems. So you've got to do it in B2B, you've got to do it in B2C. What changes a little bit is the method, how it's done. Again, it depends on the company, but in B2B, typically you've got probably less customers. So methods like Customer interviews are probably a bit more common. There could be as well surveys. And in B2C, there's, the numbers tend to be huge. So currently I work with products that, we've got, and there's a addressable market of millions of different users. So obviously we'll rely a little bit more on surveys or group discussions rather than one-on-one customer interviews. But other than that, like, I think if you, I don't think you have to address it specifically in your resume, but what I would say is make sure to remain high level. If you remain saying, I have experience doing customer segmentation or building a business plan or identifying use scenarios, etc. All of these skills are 100% transferable from B2B to B2C. So you shouldn't be afraid. But again, some companies might value a lot previous B2C experience. And in this case, it might be a little bit harder to do the transition for that specific company.
Right. I mean, and as we discussed earlier, the hiring manager should not be afraid to assemble a team with diverse experiences. So ideally, if they've got, experience, it will only enhance the rest of the group, right?
Exactly.
You talked a little bit earlier about using product language to describe previous non-product roles when interviewing, which I found fascinating. And I'm going to put you on the spot, but can you think of any specific examples where a person is coming from perhaps a completely different industry and they're explaining their role and their duties with product language?
Yeah, sure. In the end, it's when you're describing, let's say, a previous experience, it's good to start by saying, it was a company doing ABC, solving for that type of problem, etc. But then the language you use should be industry agnostic. So, no or very few acronyms, etc. So in the end, if you bring it to the right level, if you bring it to the business level, in the end, pretty much all of the companies are looking for the same thing. They're looking at increasing revenues, increasing profits. They're looking at increasing customer satisfaction, retention, increasing user engagement, etc. So if no matter the industry in which you work, but if you bring it to that level to use these metrics, these KPIs, then it becomes industry agnostic, and somebody who's from a different industry will understand, okay, that person, did XYZ and reduced the churn of their SaaS software from, I don't know, 10% to 5%. That's something pretty much any SaaS company can understand and will value no matter what specific industry you've done it in.
Oh, I love that clarification. That's wonderful. So really what it comes down to is presenting all of your previous experience in accordance with those main goals that are common to every business, really.
Pretty much. Yeah, pretty much. There might be a few exceptions if you're applying for, let's say, a non-government organization, but if you're applying for a private company, in the end, it comes down to money, more or less.
Here is a question in the Q&A from Victor. Victor says, when coming from a PM role and landing in a PMM role, what ideas may help when wanting to exert a more strategic role? So yeah, going from the PM to PMM, looking to exert more strategic roles there. Any advice for Victor?
Yeah, so I would recommend that person to look at the pragmatic framework, especially the top right corner there. Marketing plan, buyer persona, user personas, launch plan, etc. So any work that person has done as a PM to contribute to that, maybe if they're in positioning statement, even if they were not the owner of it, but if they contributed to any of those, would be highly relevant skills to identify. And also, depending on the company, some companies I've seen include in the PMM role things like competitive analysis and pricing. So maybe highlighting those skills as well would be valuable to shine your application as a PM.
Right, and appreciate the plug to the pragmatic framework there. We love that too.
Yeah.
Here is a really interesting question from Andre, who says, if you coached and grew people, How is this seen in your CV when you apply? My current company doesn't focus on that too much, unfortunately. And when interviewing, I never saw people really mentioning how they grew a team. So I can see how, mentorship might not show up in your list of duties and job requirements. How do you address that in your resume and in your interviews? Because it might be kind of outside the actual job description sometimes, but how do you bring that up and emphasize it?
Yeah. Well, like personally, this is something I put in. I think that people should put it in their resume. But then, if in the during the interview process, it's definitely something that should be mentioned because I think to me it's a core idea, even though it's not put maybe it's not put clearly in the job description, but in the end, companies hire people, as I mentioned, to solve a problem. They want the company to be more successful, and the success of the company depends on how successful is the product leader, but also his team. So, making that connection and showing that, if you want me to be successful, I need to elevate my team and to make them better and better. So highlighting that you've done it in the previous role, etc., to me should be done. It's the sort of aspects that can be weaved in answers subtly, saying, if they're asking you, I don't know, in an interview process, have you I don't know, show me an achievement of which you're proud of, for instance. If they ask that question, well, you can say, I'm proud of whatever I've done with the support of my team, and through that exercise, I was able to mentor a younger PM who helped me deliver this and this and achieve that big achievement I'm proud of. So it's the sort of thing you can weave in your answers in an interview, I think.
Interesting. And speaking of growing a team, are there signs that your team has reached maximum size? In other words, is there a point of diminishing returns to continuously growing your team indefinitely? Should you be aiming for some sort of ideal size where productivity and number of employees reaches some sort of stasis? Or do we just grow them
Sure.
forever?
Yes, sure. Yeah, there's two aspects to growing. So I've used a lot of growing in the sense of growing the team skills, but growing the team size as well. Yeah, there is a limit. I have currently like 11 direct reports. It's probably too much. So I would say that
Hopefully they're not listening when to hear you say that.
It's a lot, but it's okay. But in the end, I think ideal team size should, like direct reports, 7 to 8 is probably the maximum I would recommend, because or maybe even a little bit less, ideally 5 to 6. If it's more than that, it probably means that, teams have to be reorganized. I'm really talking about, product leader and direct PM reports. But if the teams are larger than that, they might have to be reorganized, or maybe there's an additional layer that has to be created, promoting people to management positions, let's say group product manager or director of product, or things like this, to keep the team sizes a little smaller. Because and why do I say that, the team shouldn't be too large? It's based on my experience. What we do in product management is highly complex. We blend in so many aspects of the company. There's business aspects, there's marketing aspects, there's technical aspects, sometimes legal aspect, financial aspects, etc. So there are very few projects or products that are very similar. So we have to, although we establish processes, etc., each situation in a way is unique. So to analyze it carefully and to give the right support to the people, we have to have a smaller team. It's not like a cookie cutter place where, let's say, in manufacturing, where there's 10 people who might do exactly the same thing in the same sequence. Product management is very far from that. There's really complexity. So if there's many people on the team, then you end up not having enough time to support them and to build good business cases. So, this is the company that's going to suffer in the end.
Right, right. This is a very practical question. In the age of remote work, what is your experience hiring PMs who are remote from their dev teams? What is your recommendation regarding co-location or time zone differences? Here's one of those practical questions that not many people had to think about pre-COVID, but now,
Yeah.
some of us don't even have buildings to go to anymore. How does that affect team dynamics? How do we reconcile time zone differences and productivity? Jean-Sebastien, please make us smarter.
I'm gonna say I'm probably not the expert on this topic. There's people who have thought about it more. But what I'm gonna say is, I think it's better for teams to be not necessarily to be co-located, but to have regular opportunity to build and to meet in person. So yes, obviously lots of companies go remote nowadays. It allows them to hire highly specialized and highly skilled people. I might be a bit more traditional. I'm trying to hire people who are local and that we can meet in person ideally, because I think it improves a lot with the team dynamics. Even if the tools nowadays are very performing, we can use Zoom and Teams and all of that stuff. It's the in-person contact. There's something additional. It builds that, I don't know, this sense of belonging to the company, to a group, etc. And it's all those little things that sometimes make a difference in situation of crisis, because those crises happen in all companies. There's products that are delayed for launch, and customer complaints and all of that stuff. But having these close bonds, to me, is easier to build in person. So ideal scenario is that. But again, I'm not an expert, and there's tons of books written about the topic.
Sure. It's a relatively new field, and so that team morale and bonding, you would prioritize over, say, having an employee in every time zone so that work never stops, right?
Ideally, yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I just want to point out, man, if you haven't, folks, take a look at the chat. The number of both job postings and personal profiles in there is amazing and so appropriate for today's topic. What a really cool resource you all are developing there in the chat. Let's see. We have a good question here. This one from Dan. How do you interview for the soft skills needed in product management? So I'm gonna break Dan's question up even to another one. What soft skills do you think are necessary specifically for a product management role? And then how might you demonstrate them if you're applying to a job, and how might you tease them out if you are hiring for that job?
Sure. Well, obviously that lots of product leaders are going to have different answers for this one, but one of the key skills for me of PM is soft skills, that is communication, first one. And throughout the interview, we more or less see if the person is communicating clearly and properly. That's one skill that's important. And also, like, let's say, team, like interpersonal relationships as well, is also a key, because there's very little that a PM can do without the support of all of the other departments, whether it's engineering or development or etc. So in my interviews, I like to ask those questions, related to soft skills, depending what I'm looking for. But I'm going to ask contextual question of, let's say, can you tell me about an experience where you've had to, let's say, rally a team that had divergent opinion towards a common goal? So that's an example of a soft skill question. And then from the job candidate standpoint, it's hard to highlight those soft skills in the resume, and there's people who put sometimes at the top, skills they have, and they might say results driven or passionate or easygoing or whatever. But it's hard to back that up with any quantifiable data. So for me, like the soft skills, I'm in the resume, I'm going to look, do they seem to have the hard skills? And the soft skills, I'm not going to assess it from the resume. I'm going to look at it in the interview process, because I don't think a resume is the right place to confirm if somebody has those soft skills or not.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Well, maybe
probably.
the one exception is written communication. Written
Oh,
communication in a resume, yes, for sure, you can see that if the ideas are expressed clearly, if there's any grammar or spelling mistakes. But other than that, the other soft skills, I rely on the
yeah.
interview.
That's assuming they didn't have just AI write it these days, right?
Yeah, exactly.
We gotta meet the person in person. That's how we do it
Yeah.
now. Oh my goodness. Wow. We are coming up to the top. I'll tell you what, I'm going to toss one more question over to you, Jean-Sebastien, and then I'm going to have you give any contact information for all the wonderful folks here whose question we did not get to yet today, because there were lots. There were lots. I'm going to ask you this question from Erica. Erica says, what if you don't actually have success metrics to share on your resume? For instance, if you left a previous company before or right at the launch, or you were at companies with launches that were unsuccessful, or previous companies consistently shifted priorities. And maybe that is why you are looking for a new company to join if you were struggling at the previous one and don't have those success metrics to show. How do you then make yourself stand out both in resume and in interview and demonstrate that you would be a good hire for this new wonderful company that you're hoping to join?
Yeah, that's a good question. Well, sometimes maybe your last experience, it's hard to have these success rate metrics, but maybe your previous experience, you've been there long enough to have some success metrics. So I'd recommend to make sure to look at success metrics for all of the previous experiences. If you don't have for a specific job you've had success metrics, and include any meaningful results you've had. So I don't know. I'm going to give an example of somebody I've hired who was able to carry out within a couple of carry out like significant number of customer interviews within a couple of months after being hired. So you can see I was able to deliver within, I don't know, 3 months a solid business case for a new product, or something like this. It's not a direct success metric, but you've delivered something meaningful for the company, or you said I don't know, performed an in-depth market research leading to recommendations about customer segmentation. Maybe that was never applied because you left the company or something, but at least you've delivered something to your superiors and your team.
Beautiful. There we go. Folks, thank you so much for your questions today. I apologize that we did not get to all of them. There were just so many good ones. But if you would still like to ask those questions of Jean-Sebastien, obviously they can find you in the Pragmatic alumni community. I think my lovely assistants today have posted at least your profile in the pack in the chat
Yeah.
there. I will ask them to also post your LinkedIn profile in the chat, which you provided to us. Any other addresses you would like to give out in case folks want to get in touch with you today, or will that suffice?
No, it's probably the best way. Either the pack, I'm easy to locate, or my LinkedIn. That's the best way to reach out. So I don't know if there's going to be tons of questions, but if there's many, I will reply to all of them. But maybe some of them will take a little bit more time. But yeah,
Well,
feel
judging
free.
by the number of them that we did not get to today, I think you have an audience clamoring to hear more from you. So thank you very much for that. I will wrap up by saying, once again, yes, you will get a copy of today's presentation. It will come to you in your inbox. I am told that you will also be able to find it on YouTube and other social media platforms, because we're just a big deal like that as well. Folks, Jean-Sebastien has been so incredible. I love the hand clapping emojis that come up. Yes, here is my own as well. Jean-Sebastien, thank you so much. This has been incredible. I'm going to internalize everything that I learned from you today. And any final advice, words of wisdom you would like to leave with our audience today on the topic?
Well, I think I've given all I had, but I'm gonna say happy holidays to everyone.
That is a wonderful place to end with, and I'm going there myself. So everyone, it is time for the holidays. Please take some time to be with those that you love. Think about those big questions, and we're going to take some time off as well. It might get a little quiet around the pack, but no fear, we'll be back beginning of January. Happy holidays, everyone. We will see you again next time. Goodbye, all.